tutorial this morning? Who got, yeah. Whoa! Who's feeling really bright and energetic because they got a really good, important, healthy sleep last night? There's always one. Yeah, who didn't? Yeah. And who really doesn't want to hear any loud noises this morning because it will hurt their head? Yeah, okay, cool. I won't do that because I almost feel like whispering to you as is. All is good. No, it's a beautiful morning and we've got lots of talks coming up that will be really cool. So firstly, just sort of housekeeping, if you could call it that. Just make sure that you've got your lanyards and those who have still got wrist things, keep your wrist things on. But also really important you've got your lanyards because like I said, the security guard will shoot you if you don't. And aside from that, there are some people going around doing a couple of interviews and things like that. If you'd like to participate, just sort of let them know. If you don't, let them know that you don't. But yeah, could be cool to get your thoughts on how everything's going as they sort of put together the filming side of it. That's about it. We're going to kick off in a couple of minutes. So, yeah, I mean, the bloke that we got first up to do the keynote for today, Monty, he's creator of something that's kind of maybe known by you guys, which is called Mysql. And he also creates a frankly, much better database called MariaDB. So, yeah, welcome, Monty. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. It's the third time for me to be in Australia, and I will show you a little bit about that later on. I do like interactive sessions. I'm not a speaker and a programmer. I like to be home, sitting in my cellar and do some programming, especially when it's cold outside, because in Finland there's nothing else to do in the winter. So that actually was why Mysql was created in the first place. Had nothing else to do. But with interactivity, that means interrupt me at any point in time if you want to know more, and I will ensure that both you and people around you will be rewarded instantly. So a little bit about what I will talk about. There's lots of slides. I will assume that most of you are capable of reading English. I will not talk of what's on the slide, more about around the slides. As Rasmus mentioned yesterday, it's 20 years on MySQL and PHP. Actually, looking at from MySQL, we did an internal release 20 years ago, external 19 years ago. But the project is quite old. Worked on this 34 years, and MariaDB is now 6 years. So it's a long time to do a database. I thought it was nice that Rasmus showed a little bit of history. So this is the first announcement of MySQL externally. We were inspired by MSQL. I didn't want to write the database. I just wanted to solve the problems of my customers. And I looked at both MSQL and Postgres and thought that maybe it would be nice to enhance those to make them work. But neither wanted to have any contributions, so I basically had to write my own on my old project. Originally, I had a program called Unireg that was basically paint on your screen, and you have a database, and then you can do applications. Worked really good before the web time. And I also tried Postgres. This was before Postgres has SQL. It was just way too slow. The old Unireg code I had was about 10 times faster than what Postgres could do. It couldn't satisfy our needs. So I basically was forced to write something on top of my old project to be able to satisfy the customers. SQL was natural, but as you can see on the last comment that the only good thing with SQL is the select statement. Back then I found, compared to what I had, the select statement is real powerful. You can describe things as you want very easily in a web form, but doing updates or inserts is not comparable to what you can do with other tools. And unfortunately, that still is. But that's also why we added lots of things like load data in file and insert with many values, just to make things reasonably easier, updates with many tables and so on. So this is 10 years ago when both me and Rasmus looked a lot younger. And then a little bit about my family. So Mysql is named after my oldest daughter, Me. And one of the reasons we actually started to do open source and be part of a community that thought that if it is successful, we'll be able to travel more than usual. So here we are in '99 in Madagascar, and these people had never seen a blonde person or a blonde small girl before. Has worked from home since 1982, which is a nice way to work. And in the beginning of the project, things were good. We got more and more users. I also have a son, Max, and that's why we had created MaxDB at one point. And we also had the Mysql Max version. And maybe we'll have a MariaDB Max version where there's more features enabled by default. When you grow, there are always some growing pains. And sometimes you come into strange company. Those who know the Mysql history can know what we are referring to. And some of us also was a little bit scared what will happen next. But fortunately, there is somebody who can continue. While me actually spent several years traveling around both in Australia, South America, and enjoy life. No, there's no SQL there attached anymore. MySQL is not important. You will soon understand why. But the question is the next generation up to it. It's really a hard job to take over a success. And MySQL is a really, really known trademark. And the biggest challenge I had with MariaDB, and still has, is to get people to see that there actually is another database. It's a little like pulling out a rabbit out of a hat to do things again. When I started with MariaDB, people just told me that there's no use. You had success once, you were lucky. There's very few people who are lucky twice. I like this picture because originally when I was very small, I liked a couple of things. I liked animals, and my future job that I envisioned was either being a ranger, hunting people who are hunting elephants, or being a magician. But we're quite confident that we can pull it off and actually create a better database. I actually been forbidden to show this picture in US because the one on the left, personally, it's nothing about guns. I don't like guns, but I like the look on her face about confidence. And so that's about confidence. But in the US, I have been hunted by people who say, how dare you show a picture of a girl with a gun? And considering that coming from US, I'm kind of a little bit disturbed about it. So, brief MySQL history. Original code started 81, released actually 96 with the 95 internal, 96 externally. My first public talk in English was in Australia. Some poor people who had never heard me talk before invited me. I've read a lot of books in English back then. I understand English fluently. We have no dubbing in Finland of movies, so that's the easy part. But never spoken English. I mean, I couldn't get myself to, or get people to explain the way to the bathroom because they didn't understand what I was talking about. So these poor people had to endure a 2 days tutorial. And the second day, they said that they started to understand a little bit what I was talking about, apparently databases. So things are much better now, I hope. So our biggest setback was in 2005 when Oracle bought InnoDB. Larry Ellison has said that no, we have MySQL where they we want them to be, they can grow, we are the one who is defining their future, and they don't have a future. Fortunately, Sun didn't believe that. We sold Mysql for $1 billion. I actually didn't get that much money as people believe, and a big part of that money actually went later to save MySQL under the name of MariaDB. So I put a lot of the money I got back into the community. And when Oracle started to acquire Sun, I did know that something needed to be done. I actually thought that Sun would be the perfect home for MySQL because Sun did understand open source. They didn't understand development. And when you have a company where the product is based on open source, done by developers who believe in open source, and then you have management who only wants to make money, and the new people they hire in management don't understand why do we do this open source. We can do so much more money if it's closed source. You kind of get a schism between the management team and the developers. And I thought that Sun, being a development company, would be able to fix that, which they actually showed that they could do. And I think that the proof that Sun was a perfect owner of MySQL was that within some months in the Sun acquisition, at the first big conference, the management team announced that some future feature will be closed source. I went up to the Sun management team and said, what the hell? I usually don't use bad words, but this was one of the few times when I actually mentioned the word hell. So, and they said, do you really want us to change from open source to closed source? And Sun said, no, we bought you because we're open source. We want you to teach us how to be more open, not closed. So the Sun management went to the MySQL management part, said, sorry, you can't do that. And they were quite upset with me for changing things. But Sun did change that, and the next day they announced that this closed source backup will never happen. And of course, those who know the history, we were supposed to release the new backup features that was supposed to be closed source 1 year later. That was when Oracle announced that they will buy Sun, and they told Sun that you are not allowed to release this backup as open source, and it's still not released. So those who believe that Oracle has any good intention about MySQL, just the fact that they take back things that are ready to do just because they can impact off on the business and actually have people that use MySQL instead of Oracle 11G or 12G or whatever G they have now. I think they just show that they don't care. And they shouldn't. They are just after making money. So, but a little bit back. So why did we decide to go open source? We have been using open source for more than 10 years before releasing MySQL. I have been part of many open source conferences. I like the idea of open source. I did believe that doing open source is a better way to do software. But the problem was for me that I had a family, and I wanted to ensure that if I do something as open source, I can do it with full strength. I can put all my energy on it and only do that, because there were too many open source products that was just released, and then the developer couldn't earn money on it, and basically the product died. With MySQL, we had the first product that we thought that, hey, this is good enough so we can actually earn a living on it. And then David come up with this dual licensing, and where we could say that those who are open source can use us for free, while those who actually want to embed us in a commercial product and don't want to be open source have to pay. And we thought that, hey, this can actually allow us to earn enough money that we can do this full time. We didn't ever expect that we will be sold for 1 billion. We just expected that, hey, we can probably earn more money than we can do now. Nowadays, I'm talking about on a lot of conferences about how to earn money open source. And currently, I see only two good ways for creating a company who is doing development and want to earn money and actually compete with the big guys. Either do a licensing or doing something we call business source. If you search for business source, you will find it, which basically is a delayed open source. And we are using this also in our corporate life. So some of the money I got from the sale, I put into MariaDB. The other part I did to create an investment company, Open Ocean Capital, where we invest into company in Europe and trying to help them to also be successful. And many of those are open source, and we are trying to help them to be able to compete with the big closed source companies. And those are the two methods we are trying to use to do that. So MariaDB was created with not the intention of making money, because I made my money in MySQL. I actually didn't need more money to have a comfortable life. But I didn't want that the product that I spent back then close to 30 years on to just die away. And what was even worse, I didn't want the people that I worked with for a long time to have to search for other jobs out of the MySQL space. So I created a company where developers are friends with each other. I wanted to ensure that they can work on the MySQL code for the rest of their life if they want to. And that was why MariaDB was created. Save both the people and the product. Some questions would be nice. I can start to get thirsty here. Nobody's interested in instant rewards. Okay. So we created Monty Program AB, where that hired all the core developers of MySQL, and we started to focus on MariaDB. The idea was to do it like with MySQL. We started a virtual company. I was in Finland leading a project, and the rest of the people were elsewhere. I didn't want to create a new MySQL. I just wanted to say the product. So we were basically a very technical company. We only did development, and we used something that we call the hacking business model, just to prove, both to do the right thing and to prove to people who said that Monty just wants to create a new company and sell it again. I created something called the hacking business model with Zach Grant, where you have a companies owned by the employees. So how many are you working on your own company, or would like to create your own company some days? So if you want to create a company of equals, have a friends where everybody are treated equal, look at the hacking business model. You have all the rules for how doing it, how treating people right. So when I created Monty Program AB, we already had these rules in place. So your employment contract was basically, here's what you should do, here's your salary, everything else is here on the web in this contract. And we follow that to the end until we merged with SkySQL. And basically, when we merged with SkySQL, everybody got equal share of the company when it was sold. But the main reason for going together with SkySQL AB was to create a bigger company. So SkySQL AB, now renamed MariaDB Corporation, that was a company I helped fund because I didn't have money to keep 20 developers working for 5 years without actually big customers or help. But I didn't have enough money to be able to also do the same thing for the salespeople, the trainers, and the support people. So I helped found SkySQL just to create a home for them, and they were doing all the front support, and we did the back support for there, so the customer could get everything they needed from one company. So now everybody's working in MariaDB Corporation, except me and a few others. And the corporation is the biggest driver of the MariaDB project, self-subscription tools and everything else.
Excuse
so
me.
If you,
just a question about that. And that's sort of what sort of capital do you need to be able to run this sort of, or start up this sort of business? I mean, you obviously were quite successful from.
So capital to do this, I spent roughly 4 million euros on saving the workplaces for the developers. And in the beginning I thought that it should be interesting for all these big companies who are totally depending on MySQL, like Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. They should probably be interested to ensure that MariaDB or MySQL would succeed. Because the only way an open source project dies is if you lose the developers. And they didn't want to stay at Oracle. So that's what was one of the main reasons I created those. But all these big companies told me that it's very interesting what you do. We are certainly going to follow what you are doing. But we are not using MariaDB. Of course, they couldn't because I just started it. And when we are using it, we will consider helping you. So it's kind of strange that these companies, totally depending on a product, had a blind trust that Oracle will do the right thing and not try to charge them more. So, to save the project for 5 years, that cost me 4 million euros. SkySQL has got external investors. I think they have got some 10 million investment. Nothing compared to MongoDB or anything else because we did this in Europe. But no, it looks like we are doing very well. The company is growing and probably hit profitability next year, and then we'll get even more investment so we can compete with MongoDB and others. That's candies filled with vodka. So, but at the same time, we were very successful with MySQL, but that we was sold to Sun was pure chance, and you can never guarantee that they will be a good owner. And I wanted to ensure that even if we had a MariaDB corporation, I'm a founder and sitting on the board, I want to ensure that what happened to MySQL could never happen to MariaDB. So I created the MariaDB Foundation, who is the owner of the source repositories. We can't be owner of all the code because it's GPL, but at least we can be owners of repositories, and we have some control of some part of the MariaDB trademark. And that allows us to tell that this is the official version of MariaDB, which is known on GitHub. And that also means that if somebody would buy MariaDB Corporation and close it down, I can still add code and commit to the MariaDB code, and anybody else can do that because it's not owned by the corporation. And that's the difference with MySQL. I can't contribute to MySQL because Oracle has closed the code for contributors, and they don't accept contributors. In this case, it's the foundation who is independent, who can always tell that who can contribute or not. So I basically fixed the one bug that I had in the original scheme. And the thing is that if you have an open source project and you have investors and you get public or get sold, what I didn't realize that the management, they have I don't say that this is exactly what's happening in MySQL, but this was something I realized basically the last year, that the management owns a lot of stock, but when they got sold, they can't sell the stocks within half a year. It's kind of usual. And the value of the stock is, of course, dependent on how much money they make. So if you're looking at it from management point of view, is that if they want to have maximum return, what they should do, as soon as the company is sold or in the stock market, they should close the project as much as possible, force people to pay, be able to show huge revenues, stock will go up, and then they sell the stock. And when the project dies because nobody wants to use it, they don't have to care anymore. And we had signs in MySQL that was happening. That was also one of the reasons that they, within Sun, when it comes to MySQL, wanted to turn some of the things closed source just because they were on this path. So you need to take care of that if you're an open source project and take investors. one way is to do like we do with the foundation. So our goal is to work with the community and ensure that any patches, anybody who wants to be part of the MariaDB development team can get the patches in, can get help, can get reviews. That's what the foundation is doing. It's handling everything that has to do with the community while the corporation works with the customers. So we are now 4 people. I'm the CEO, actually new CEO started in December. So this is one old slide, so sorry about that. And foundation, you need money to be able to do that, so I'm very happy to Booking.com, MariaDB Corporation, Parallels, Automatic, Cinemax, and Visma, who has made it possible for me to do what I'm doing now. And if there's a sponsor who wants to help us doing what we're doing, either by spending time or money, please contact me. Because the only way I can continue doing this MariaDB for the foreseeable future is we get enough money to pay off the 5 developers that we have. So, how many here are using MySQL? Okay, and MariaDB? So that's actually that's pretty good, about roughly 10%. So we need to change that. Increase it, just to make it clear. So, the next slides will tell you that all the benefits you all will get if you go and move from MySQL to MariaDB today. So we are, in all practical sense, we are 100% compatible drop-in replacement. You can just take MySQL, remove it, add MariaDB, and it will work. And to prove it, so we had about 27 MariaDB users here. Had any of you a single problem at all when going from MySQL to MariaDB? Not really. But I have asked that question in 20 conferences, and so far, not a single had a problem. Or not something that can be changed within minutes. I think that's kind of the best proof I can show you that we actually are compatible. We have done a lot of releases during the last 6 years. We just released a couple of days ago 10.1 at beta. It should be GA in end of February, maybe beginning of February. We also worked with Lgpl to make a multi-master version. More about that later. So I will go into the features in the releases, but shortly, the first one was just fix a lot of small things that was wrong in MySQL 5.1. 5.2, we worked with the community to get in a lot of patches that has been submitted to MySQL but never approved for various reasons. And that actually was something that failed within MySQL, that we didn't have a department who actually worked closely with the community and ensured that patches actually would go in. And with MariaDB Foundation, we have that in MariaDB. So in 5.3, that's basically the optimizer release. We have the best optimizer in the MySQL ecosystem because the full optimizer team went out from Oracle and Sun and started to work on MariaDB. And then 5.3 was basically just a merge of 5.3 and 5.5. In 10.0, we added most of the 5.6 features like online alta table and things. We added multi-source and a really good parallel replication, better than MySQL has even in the upcoming releases. Very global transaction ID, more about that later. And 10.1, the main features is that instead of having Galera as a separate product, it's now integrated in the main source. I was part of reviewing the code and cleaning it up. So I'm still trying to do about 50% of development. The rest of my time is spent of going to conferences, convince people that MariaDB is the future, and also try to help companies within OpenOcean to let them succeed. And we also added strong encryption, and even better parallel replication. More about that later. So I learned I have 11 minutes, so I will try to take those features relatively fast. But we have a feedback plugin. It's on by default in 10.1 beta because we really want to see what people are using, because doing a development of a project like MySQL, our biggest problem has always been that what are people actually using? And the feedback plugin actually tells us not who you are, but how many tables of these types are you using, so we know where to put our resources. So we decided that for 10.1, until it's GA, we will have it on just so we can get some data of what are people using, where should we do more development. So if you're using MariaDB, please put it on. It only does show status once a week and sends that to us. It's not using for, it's not going to the corporation, it goes to the foundation, but we need that to know what to do next. And all the statistics is available, so you can see who are using the new version. Basically, you can see that 10.0 has already 1/3 of the users. So in 5.2, where we took things from the community, we added a lot of stuff. The blue ones are things that comes from the community. So I will give you a couple of seconds to see that. The segmented key cache, I don't know how many are using MyASM still, but MyASM is still a very good storage engine if you want to create data elsewhere and then copy to the server, or if you are concerned about the footprint. But we are now about 3 times faster than MySQL with MyASM tables. And 5.3, that's the biggest redesign of the optimizer that has been done. Some of that work is in MySQL 5.6 because it's based on work that was done in MySQL 6.0 that Oracle promised to release as part of what they agreed with the EU Commission. They still never released 6.0, but they have backported some things like the optimizer. But we backported those things and added 3 more years of 3 of the best optimizer guys in MariaDB. That's why we have such a good optimizer. And we have always been criticized with MySQL that nice database, but Postgres is so much more advanced. With 5.3 and forward, we have a comparable optimizer that to any of the other databases, including Postgres. So we have faster joins, lots of new algorithms of doing the joins faster. And this would just take too long to read compared to the other ones. So one of the big things that we added was, in 5.3, was added group commit to solve one of the biggest problems with MySQL back then was that replication was not fast enough. We also added progress reporting for alter tables. So if you do an alter table, you will get on the command line 10% done, 20% done, 30% done, which is kind of nice, and we can use that to do other things in the future. So if you use it, yeah?
Sorry, just on the online alter stuff. So when you get to really, really big tables, like 100 million records, is there any way to throttle that through the current tooling or not?
With online alter table, basically it's done in the background. So it doesn't take any time. The table is not locked.
But it does tend to cost disk I/O and so on and so forth, so there is an impact on the system. One of the things we've noticed is using things like the Picona tools has made it a lot easier for us. So because we can just batch it out over some long period of time, watch out for slave drift on the rest of the rig, sort of doing it and just assuming that it's all going to go smoothly as fast as it possibly can is not a safe assumption.
So that's basically, we haven't thought about that, and if looking at the future, within 1 year or 2, you're probably running SSDs, in which case it's not a problem. This is only a problem on disk. So the question, how much things or effort should we do on looking at all technology. I believe that these are valuable for the future for backup and long-term storage and things that you don't need. But your relevant data will probably be in SSDs, and in this case, you don't need to throttle on SSDs. So this already in 5.3, and when this graph was published from Facebook, that's when people actually started to notice us, and this was kind of 2 years into the project. So, but this basically shows that MySQL 5.5 and before. How many are using 5.5? So basically, this MySQL doesn't scale at all when you use the replication. Facebook tried to fix it with the red one, and then they come to us, can we do it better? And Christian Nielsen fixed it. So we basically have really good scaling over users. So by just switching to MySQL, from MySQL to MariaDB, if you're using 5.5, you basically get a 4 times speed up without doing any changes, if you're using replication. MySQL 5.6 tried to fix that, and that's the yellow curve, so they actually can get some scaling. In MariaDB 10.0, we did it even better, which is the blue one, and we are still doing much better when it comes to concurrency. Have a couple of slides about NoSQL. I will have not time to do that, talk much about it, except that we added a lot of features in MariaDB for making life easier for those who are also using NoSQL or NaSQL, not at all SQL. So to solve the problem with being able to store different attributes, we added dynamic columns that basically allows you to have a different set of columns for each row. Basically, it's kind of a packed object, and we also added features in 10.0 to be able to do this with JSON. And it's done with only adding 6 more functions, 7 if you also add column underscore JSON. And with this as a base, we created storage engines for Cassandra and LevelDB. So you can join in MariaDB 10.0, you can join Postgres, Cassandra, Oracle, and MariaDB and Postgres in the same query, which is kind of cool. So MySQL is not open source anymore. It's open core because Oracle has started to add closed source features like the thread pool. With MariaDB, we try to ensure that any feature they add as closed source, we have as open source. And this one is important because when you have more clients, so that's from 8 to 4,000 clients, MySQL starts to, or performance drop drastically around 256 clients. And the reason is that when you have lots of threads, all the CPU power is going to switching threads. Going from a thread pool, thread by connection to thread pool where you have, for example, 200 threads who are doing all the queries, you have much less thread switching and you get much better performance. So we added that. And we have had people testing out MySQL against MariaDB. And just this one, if you are not using replication, it gives you instantly, for most busy sites, 50% speed up easily. So we are now calling MySQL the version number 10.0 and not MariaDB 5.6. You have the reasons here, basically, because we have lots of the features that are in 5.6 and 5.7. Doesn't make it logically to call it 5.6. So we just wanted to do our own version number to make things easier. And we are not depending on MySQL, because with 5.5, we had a problem that we do a merge every month from MySQL to get in all the bug fixes. We spend a lot of time fixing bugs that the MySQL team has introduced because they don't know the code anymore. And they have tried to fix it, that the problem that they lost all the core engineers by adding new, who doesn't understand the code, and they are fixing their, I would say in one case of 10, they are fixing the wrong way. So we're spending a lot of time doing these merges, but fortunately with 10.0 onwards, we are not depending on any fixes on the optimized or the replication, because we already have better what they have. But basically, moving from MySQL earlier or from 5.6, basically it's trivial. So the current version is 10.0. We ported the most important things from 5.6. We also fixed a lot of things. The global transaction ID is probably one of the most important features in 5.6, and MySQL got it totally wrong. It doesn't really work. The corporation has lots of users using MySQL, MariaDB, different versions. The biggest problem we have is with MySQL 5.6 and the global transaction ID, because sometimes it goes out of sync and there's no way to fix it, except of course moving to MariaDB, which we tell them to do. But you usually can't do that to customers. So we can fix almost anything except the replication in 5.6. It's really, really bad. So, but the other main thing we have is we have true parallel replication. So the curve I showed you earlier, earlier about how much better we have replication. We are using that to make, or how much faster we are in the master. We are using that to make the slave faster. But I have a couple of slides about that. So lots of new features, especially in the storage engine. We have Cassandra, we have Connect engine, TOQ, Spider, automatic sharding. We added roles. We have much better GIS support. For once, we have a MySQL version who has better GIS support than Postgres, so we are pretty happy with that. So global transaction ID, basically what allows you to, if you have a master and a slave and several slaves, if the master goes down, you can now trivially point or make one of the slaves a master and point the other ones to it, just with a couple of commands. And ours can also support multi-source replication. Multi-source replications means that you have one master here, they're independent. Then you have a slave here who takes data from both of those, which is very useful if you want to have one place to make backup of all your things, for example. So the parallel application is probably one of the biggest features in 10.0, that it allows you allows the slave to ensure that anything that was run in parallel on the master are run in parallel on the slave. And we do that by, when we do the group commit on the master, we add marks in the binary log, and then the slave can know that all of these can be run independent, so we span different threads to run those. And this makes the slave as fast as the master. And we have some curves that basically shows that that usually before, without parallel replication, things would be flat on the slave. This just shows that we get really good scaling. And what we did, or we can show here that for the slave to be able to keep up with the master, it has to have the same performance of the master. So here's basically the performance compared to the master. And this shows that even when you have 500 clients on the master, if you have 8 threads applying those on the slave, you get the same performance as the master. So in 10.0, we made the replication even faster by having it doing predictive parallel application. So we noticed that these things on the, we still have more CPU on the slave. Then we are taking future transactions from the master and running those in parallel. If they succeed, we commit them together. If not, they are either rolling back or waiting for the previous to complete, which will actually make the slave be able to handle a case in parallel that was not running parallel on the master. For example, on the master, if you have only one connection, you'll do lots of inserts to different tables. In that case, they're done in serial on the slave, also on the master, but on the slave, you can run those in parallel.
Does that apply to both row-based and statement-based applications?
Yes.
I'm actually still drunk. I don't need it.
No, you take one. It will make you feel better. I promise. I'm a Finn, I know. So we also added lots of improvements for Fusion I/O. Fusion I/O is a really, really nice SSD card, but we basically made it 30% faster, and by adding compression, you can get twice as much stored on it without losing lots of performance. We also added timeouts. Compound statements is pretty nice because you can do a if something, create a table, and if you can do that for anything. This per query values also, we took that from the Percona server, but we actually extended it a lot to make it work. And so now you can do for one statement, you can set a lot of variables and then execute the statement, and those variables is only set for the execution time of that statement, which is very nice with this, for example, with the timeout stuff. We are also trying to do a lot of things to add performance. So one of the nice things that Oracle is doing is that they still have the complete InnoDB team, and they're doing a lot of things to do much more performance from MySQL, mostly on the InnoDB part, because that's the only full team they have. And by having getting all of that into MariaDB, Oracle has helped a lot to make our things better. But still, there are some things they haven't fixed. So we have no one of the original core InnoDB engineers working on MariaDB. So if he added 64K page support in InnoDB, which actually is important because InnoDB can only have a record that is up to 1/4 of a page. And we had one user who needed 16K rows, and he couldn't do that with MySQL. Then we have lots of things planned for future releases. The slides will be available, so I will not go into those. But we have lots of ideas of what needs to be done. If somebody wants to be part of development, or there is some feature that you need for your company, you can just connect with the foundation and we will help you do that. We will help you, tell you how to do it, review it, and get it into the code. So how to help us work, either be part of the development team or use us, give us feedback, or even add, just enable the feedback plugin. If your company is a rich company depending on MySQL and you care at all about the MariaDB or MySQL future, try to get them to sponsor us a bit so I can afford to come to conferences like this and bore you to death or try to kill you with these chocolate candies. We're also doing Lgpl client libraries because there's lots of commercial applications who wants to use MySQL and MariaDB, and actually Oracle is making it very, very hard for them by doing that, both by sometimes refusing to sell license for MySQL or just making MySQL more expensive than Oracle. And that's actually true. So by doing free drivers, they can actually use, in many cases, MySQL and MariaDB without having to pay license fees. We also added TokuDB, which is the only storage engine I know of who actually can replace InnoDB. So it's much faster in search and much less disk space. So if you have problems with InnoDB, you can always try TokuDB. We also added a Kinect storage engine who can read lots of different formats, including JSON. So when you realize sometimes that maybe MongoDB was not the right thing for you to do and you need to go to MariaDB, you can just use the Kinect engine to just read in all the MongoDB tables directly. We have spent a lot of time to do a free documentation. There's lots of things people can help us by improving it, translating it from British English to Australian English or something like that. And it's not a project that only I and my people are working on. There's lots of people in the community who actually are part of helping us with making MariaDB possible. And Google has even employed people to work on MariaDB. I don't have time to go into that one, but this is probably the most important thing. So when starting MariaDB in 2009, I thought that I should have some credibility, have done this before. It shouldn't be so hard to get people to switch to MariaDB. But up to 2012, we didn't have any big companies using MariaDB. And compared to MySQL, when we got users instantly, and we was not able to do the same thing with MariaDB, I did understand that something needs to be done. So I went to Wikipedia and said that you have been very helpful with MariaDB and you have shown a lot of support to us. But how about if you would switch to MariaDB just to show that you actually trust the technology? And we can do a deal that I will fix anything that any problems that you are encountering. And Wikipedia had their own version of MySQL that was heavily optimized for their own use. And they were convinced that there's no way they can move to a future version because they need all this optimization that was done. So they tested MariaDB, noticed it was much faster than their MySQL version, switched the English version of Wikipedia to MariaDB, announced that, and now they switched as far as I know, everything else. And they announced that. And that was the second time people noticed us. And that's when things start to happen. That was also at the same time I created the MariaDB Foundation, and they wanted to help the foundation by doing this announcement. And then within some months, most of the Linux distributions moved to MariaDB, and I had expected them to just add MariaDB as an option. But there were some of those, like SUSE and Red Hat, was pretty annoyed with Oracle, and they just switched. They decided to say that we only use MariaDB, we don't need MySQL anymore. And Red Hat Enterprise is no, and SUSE Enterprise is now only shipped with MariaDB. You can get MySQL, but it's not default. MariaDB is default. And these big enterprises can actually believe that all their customers can just upgrade to MariaDB silently and nothing breaks. Kind of shows the confidence that we got around MariaDB. But that was a lot of work. And when you asked earlier about how much money you need to do for pulling some of this off, if Wikipedia wouldn't have moved to MariaDB, I wouldn't know if I would have enough money to pull it off. So we were discussing here yesterday about how much luck do you need to be able to pull off a project, and how much is hard work. Until 2012, it was just hard work. It was pure luck that I got Wikipedia convinced. And then that everybody else was annoyed with Oracle and decided that, hey, Wikipedia is running, we can also do that. So reason to switch to MariaDB today. The simple answer is there's no reason whatsoever to run MySQL. You get instantly 4 times speed up if you're using replication. If not, you're probably getting, if you have a busy website, 50% speed up. Lots of features, guaranteed open source, and a predictable future, because we are here to stay. We are not like Oracle, who have given so far not a single promise about MySQL future. So why should you use MySQL? Trust me. I have the candies. But what made MySQL successful in the first place? And this is kind of rules for if you are your own project and want to make it public and try to do what we were doing. The main reason was probably that we were using ourselves. And also, yesterday I were a talk about that should you contribute to a project and how should you do that? I would say that you shouldn't contribute to a project that you're not using yourself, because then you don't know what you're doing, and you may be adding things that nobody else will find useful. But if you're doing something that you need, there's a big chance that other people also will need it. And we were lucky, internet was new, everybody needed a database. We also had one of the first open source projects actually delivered everything in binary. We spent lots of time to make it trivial to install us. And I personally wrote 30,000 emails during the first 5 years just to help people. Not like some projects that say, if you need help, you need to take support. It's very important that you get an active community who help others. And I spent a lot of time doing that. And lastly, I'm very happy to Oracle, who is still doing some good things, especially around InnoDB, SkySQL, or MariaDB, MariaDB Corporation, who has 10 engineers working full-time on MariaDB. I'm working on the foundation to ensure that the corporation is doing the right things. We have done a lot of things on it. The community, especially Oliver Bertrand, who has done amazing things with the Kinect engine, he just saw some months ago that people talk about JSON. We should probably have support for that, and I just added that. And Google, who has, thanks to Google Sum of Code, made us able to add roles by Vincenzo Ciorbaru, and he is now employed by the foundation. We also got somebody added a new regex library, the same thing I think that PHP is now using. And they also contributed to 10.1 strong encryption. So that was about it. Now is your last chance to earn some chocolate.
Ozzy, I just want to ask you about one of the features you mentioned earlier, the time limit on queries. Does that simply abort the query, or does that potentially return a partial result if it's got something within the time limit?
The query timeout will abort the query. We also have an option to say that only go through this many rows, and when you have hit this many rows, then return what you have found. We also have that option.
No
like
more.
the candies?
Yeah, they are actually very good. As far as PHP is concerned, we now have MySQL and the native driver, which was created by Oracle to get around the whole GPL of libmysql client. And that's been fantastic for PHP, which is great performance improvements and features and stuff. Is MariaDB doing anything with that? Because if Oracle goes away, MySQL native driver needs a steward.
I think that it's Georg who is handling the driver. He's employed by the corporation, so I think we already have full control of the driver, as far as I know.
Okay, great.
So we have employed more and more people working on the connectors, and either working with the community to ensure that they are done, and they will always work both with MySQL and with MariaDB. And sometimes we are improving them.
Add-ons, plugins in Echo, which need some love.
Okay?
Like master swipe, replication, things like that.
Okay? Send an email. And I will give that to George and Georg, and he will look at that.
You mentioned before about a stronger encryption, or that you improve the security in the latest releases of MariaDB. What is that? It's just for the connection to the database, or internal?
No. So but we added encryption two patches. One from Google, who encrypt everything in InnoDB, and also in the ARIA storage engine if you want to. But at the same time, we got a patch from a pair in Germany, who I actually have worked closely with, who you can allow you encrypt only those tables that you want to. So we have both of those features in MariaDB. Pair, the Google patch, they didn't give us everything. They didn't give us the key management, but they tried to make something so strong that NSA can't break it. And we have everything except the key management. So if you use that, you have to spend 1 day or 2 days to do key management. With a pair, you have everything. And it was kind of strange to work on that. I was closely involved. I was the one who encouraged a pair to add strong encryption to MariaDB. And then they announced that on the email list that they're working with me for doing that. Then Google said, but we already have that. And then we asked, so can you contribute that? We will do that eventually. And the pair thought that that's good. Should we can we collaborate on that? Google basically didn't answer. So they did their own stuff, and we were about to release 10.1 with the pair stuff, when Google said, no, you won't have our stuff too. And then they added that in the last minute, and I had to spend together with some other people and a pair basically 1 month to merge all that together and get it to work without conflicts. And that's why 10.1 was delayed basically 2 months.
That was a lot. Hey, Mari, here.
2 minutes, he says, so be fast.
Yeah, it's a fast question. Any plans or any talks to have Amazon Web Service to support MariaDB on their RDS?
I think that they already say that they can support it, and they have a package for it. They are in a way, either they have approved of it or they are in the process of approving that. So we are working very closely with them to both have MySQL and MariaDB as both approved packages, and in the long run, hopefully move to MariaDB, because they have no forked MySQL, and I know how hard it is to do that. And there's no sense whatsoever that they have to spend money on 10 to 20 engineers just to do merges. It's much better that they do work with MariaDB, and then we can do the merges for them. So I believe in the future, if they have any sense of engineership, they will move to MariaDB.
Cool, thanks.
Just for the moment, I guess there's a big aim for as close as possible compatibility with MySQL, but moving forward into the future, do you see a divergence between MariaDB and MySQL? And in particular, if something like, let's say you implement some new features that are really well received by the community, and then MySQL goes ahead and does the same thing like 3 months later, but their syntax is slightly different or something, and they just become incompatible.
They are doing that constantly. For example, we added microsecond in a nice way in MariaDB 5.2. In 5.6, they have that completely different syntax, completely different storage.
So
and
what's the plan to deal with that, or is
we
there
already fixed that, so we can use both.
Do you ever see a situation where you will not be able to do that, or like will there just be...
For storage on disk and the protocol, I don't see envision in any future where we'll not be able to move. For syntax, they are doing stupid things. When we, we added a variable for, no, I don't remember exactly what the syntax it was, but we added a variable for configuring something. They noticed that, hey, that's good, let's do it the same thing. But because we added a variable, they couldn't use a variable. So they added syntax instead for doing the same thing, just because they didn't want to copy us, which is stupid. So they are making things harder. For example, for example, for doing timeouts on queries, they have a syntax for setting the timeout and then the query. We have it completely general, but you can set any variables, and the timeout is just one variable. So we know we have to support both.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work to fix things that they are doing wrong.
Do you feel like...
And in the future, there may be things that we are not doing because we don't see a sense for that. So our aim is to ensure that any popular product in the open source community or closed source community is using, we will have that syntax and that support for that. But if there's something that they add that we just think is crazy, or they are removing things that we don't see, why should we remove this because this is not conflicting with anything? Then we are not going to do that. For example, in 5.7 they have said that they will remove the possibility to store 0 in dates. I find that very convenient myself, especially looking at the database, because the other option would be that you have that as null. But the null column in an index is very inefficient because you basically need to have different variable length fields. So it makes the index much, much slower. That was the reason I added 0 dates in the first place. And also, when you get data from old computers or old applications, they use 0 dates. And by replacing that with null, you actually lose information. So I like to be able to do that. They are removing that because I believe that they wanted it to make it easy for people to move from MySQL to Oracle 12G. And if MySQL has things that they don't want to add to Oracle, it's much easier to remove them in MySQL. At least that's the theory I have. I don't know if that's true, but I don't understand why would you move something that people are using a lot for no reason whatsoever, except that this is not what we normally do in Oracle.
Thanks.
Don't worry, I have a couple of more bags. But I only have 1 minute, so. So I think this is the last one.
You say in there that it's analyze is better than explain. The analyze in Postgres is really, really cool. And in MySQL, the explain it's actually very poor. How much better is the analyze statement now? What is able to provide?
So basically, it's explain is a table, analyze is a JSON object, so we add much more information about what's happening. So the main difference with explain is that explain asks the optimizer, how will you do that? Analyze runs the query and then tells you what did actually happen. But it does in a different format, so you get more information. Okay. Hungry guy. Okay. Thank you.